you. And thank you all for being here today in Boston for such a wonderful day of celebration. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you, Jean and Fred, for your tremendous leadership to make this day possible. And thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Patrick, for your support, for your advice, and for your friendship. I am truly honored to be with you on such a happy day. We are here to dedicate the Kennedy Institute, a place designed with one of the loftiest goals possible, to inspire, to encourage, to engage. It's a lofty goal, but it is the right one for an institute to honor Ted Kennedy. And here's how I know how. Back when I was a law professor, I studied the early signs that America's once strong middle class was in serious trouble. I studied people in bankruptcy, people who went to college, who got married, who had kids, who ended up pushed over a financial cliff. Solidly middle-class folks, and more than 90% in bankruptcy because of a medical problem, a job loss, or a family breakup. The squeeze on the middle class was getting tighter, and more families were deep in debt. Bankruptcy was their last option to scratch their way back to dead flat broke and try to build some kind of future. Credit card companies saw this, and they figured out that they could boost their profits if they squeezed these people a little harder. So they wanted to change the bankruptcy laws so that hundreds of thousands more people every year would be locked out of bankruptcy and left mired in debt. Better profits by squeezing people, drowning in medical debt, and dealing with job losses. I was truly appalled. Now, understand how this fight shaped up. Credit card companies were smart. They had already lined up a lot of powerful folks to support them, both Democrats and Republicans. They had money galore. They had lobbyists galore. And the families going bankrupt, they had nothing, literally nothing. They had no PACs. They had no lobbyists. They were miserable and so humiliated they probably wouldn't have shown up for a political rally if they'd been invited. Senator Kennedy's counsel, Melody Barnes, had heard me give a talk, and she came up afterwards and she said to me, "You need to meet my boss." I never met him, and it was April 17th, 1998. I showed up in his office on the 24th floor of the JFK building. Now, understand, I didn't know anything about politics. I'd never met anyone like this. In fact, I've been a registered Republican until a few years before that. But the senator agreed to meet with me. He greeted me like we'd known each other forever. He swept me across the office and over to his windows and pointed out Old North Church and all kinds of other sites. Talked so fast I could barely understand him. We had 15 minutes on the schedule, and we sat down and started to talk about what was happening to working families, about how hard some of them were getting squeezed, about how hard they worked and how much was going wrong, and about that bankruptcy bill. And a 15-minute meeting turned into an hour and a half. And at the end, Senator Kennedy stood up, and he gave me that big, beautiful smile, and he said, "You've done it, Professor. You have my vote." I looked straight back at him and I said, "We don't need your vote. We need your leadership." That's a big difference. You know, it's kind of like the difference between being the kindly uncle who drops by at the right time with a birthday gift and being the parent who really has to raise the kid every single day and make it work. To be the one who gets out there and trades and pushes and pulls. We needed him to agree to be the leader, and it was a really big ask. He stood there, and I remember exactly what he looked like. His eyes were puffy. He was a little stooped. He was in constant back pain. He looked tired, and he looked over at that big satchel of papers that he always had. The satchel full of a zillion other commitments that he had already made, a zillion other fights that he'd already agreed to fight. He looked at it and looked back at me, looked again, and then he just said, "I'll do it." And that's what he did. He kept his word, and he led that fight for 10 years. I left his office and I went out to the elevator bank and put my head against the wall and I cried. Senator Kennedy changed my life that day. I hadn't liked politics. All the lobbyists and cozy dealings and special favors for those who could buy access. But I stood in the lobby outside Ted Kennedy's office, and I felt clean. I'd come into his office with no political connections, no money. Improving the bankruptcy system certainly wasn't going to help in his next re-election campaign. And frankly, everyone knew that eventually we were going to lose this. But Senator Ted Kennedy, the lion of the Senate, agreed to lead this fight because it was the right thing to do for millions of people hanging on by their fingernails who just desperately needed a little help. He changed my life, and he changed what I understood about public service, what it means to fight for working people just because it's the right thing to do. This institute will give millions of people an opportunity to be inspired. That is the perfect way to honor the memory of Ted Kennedy. Thank you.